Hello. Welcome to Why Not Both, the podcast all about how our multiple passions and interests shape our identity and our lives. My name is Pam Schaefer, and I am a musician and therapist in Los Angeles, and I also happen to be your host. This podcast is produced by Laura Studeris, and for this season, we've partnered up with Under the Radar magazine. If you like what you hear, you can hang out with us on social media. We are on Twitter and Instagram at WNB the podcast. And if you really, really like what you hear, please support us on Patreon. We are under Why Not Both podcast. When you join our Patreon, you get a whole bunch of really cool behind the scenes stuff and you get to chat with us. And that's pretty awesome. Thank you so much for your support, and I hope you enjoy our interviews. For this episode, we were joined by the absolutely inimitable Reggie Watts. I hope you enjoy our chat. Things that have happened so far during podcasts, we've encountered leaf blowers, helicopters, and one of my neighbors shot a nail gun through one of the pipes while I was recording.
I love it. Just all these people thinking like, you know what? I'm a pretty handy person. I think I'll be able to. No. You're not.
You're not. That's not the way. No. It is not the way.
I do. My dad used to. No, don't start with my dad used to. That's not going to work.
No. I know better. I know better than, even though I've, like, the biggest home improvement I've made is I put up curtains. Like, that was as daring as I got. I was just like.
But you were successful. You know,
I'm looking at them right now and they haven't fallen down yet. So I'm going to count that as a victory.
Yeah, I can tell by your vocal tonality that you accomplished it. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I was just like, I'm still, there's like a part of me that like looks at them every day that is like, is this the day that they fall? But they haven't.
That's so great. I love it. It's like an adventure every day. You're like, is it still there? Okay, good.
Yeah. Oh, good. I haven't destroyed my home. Well, welcome to Why Not Both, where we talk about home improvements and failing internet. It's a really thrilling podcast.
Wow, home improvements and failing internet is my favorite show, by the way. So. Thanks.
Love it. Glad you're here. In like the before times, I would often ask people like, what do they do and what's a better question to ask? Because oftentimes we define ourselves by what we do. And I'm like, is that even a good question? Though now I'm just sort of like, hey, how's stuff?
Hey, that's an honest way. Yeah, I guess these times everything's just you had to change the way everything happens. So I suppose, I don't know, you just got to go with what is making sense in this moment for people. So I get that.
Exactly. Like what's kind of like the landscape of your time during this time that's not time because it's a construct?
I'm shaking. I hope you can hear this. Little protein shake.
ASMR shake. Are you going to whisper about it?
Girl, listen, I just made myself an excellent protein shake. I'm on drink right now. Exactly how it was yesterday. No, what have I been doing? I guess I've been, I don't know. It's like a kind of a lost period. It's like a lot of meandering and wandering. Both mentally and physically, I suppose. It's weird. It's like, in the beginning when it all first happened, we had that hardcore lockdown.
Yeah.
I loved it. Because I grew up an only child. I require a lot of time by myself, and and so I was like, playing video games, eating edibles, and ordering Postmates and watching stuff, and just going woo, and of course, like after a month and a half or so of that, I was just kind of like, oh, okay, well, and then when we learned, how long, as it kept going and it got longer and longer, now I go to work. But we've got all these protocols at the Late Show. Which I'm thankful for, because I get to be tested twice a week, which is awesome.
Wow.
and they're PCR tests, so they're they're high quality tests, and so that's really nice. And so but even though we've been going back and kind of semi normal, like maybe 30% the normality of doing that show.
Yeah.
It's still like I'm grateful to get to go to work for sure. I know a lot of people don't have jobs and things like that, so I'm very appreciative. That's the one thing I guess throughout this whole thing, no matter how down I get or melancholic I get for kind of feeling a little the existential crisis that all of us have been feeling. I have to constantly just like remind myself, like, oh no, you're very fortunate. You have a job. You know what you want to do. You're safe for now. Your mom's safe. That kind of stuff, and just be grateful for that all the time. But at the same time, you're living your life, and everything's relative. And if you feel slightly depressed or melancholic, there's no logical rationalization you can do. You can't rationalize your way out of it.
No.
So that's kind of been my time. It's just going between those two things, like, trying to do stuff, like I had a couple pods of friends that I was seeing, over the last, I guess, 2 months or so.
Mm-hmm.
But that it kind of changed because like one of them acquired the virus, everyone else tested negative, but they got it like after they came back from a trip, and we hadn't seen them, but everybody got tested. So then that kind of like squashed that a little bit,
Are they okay?
What's that?
Are they doing okay?
Yeah. She was young. She was like 26 or something like that, so she's fine. I mean, although that's still no guarantee, obviously, but she's totally fine. She just had mild flu-like symptoms, but no, she's fine, thankfully. And I've had a few people like in outer rings get it, and it's just a weird phenomenon that's happening, and it's I think overall it's a good thing, because it causes us to alter our behavior and to kind of reprioritize things, and and yeah, so I don't know. That was a long-winded answer, but that's kind of it. It was all over the place. It basically symbolized.
That's totally cool.
I know, totally. It's like people don't want to hear people talk for a long time. It's like, oh no, they do. Oh, okay.
I'm so glad to hear that they are keeping you safe at work, because that is something that I worry about. Like I feel very fortunate that my jobs are all from my home, though it is a bit surreal doing all of the things that I do, like
wow,
in one room, essentially.
What are all the things you do, by the way?
Oh, I'm a musician, and I'm a therapist, and I'm a podcaster.
Whoa, a therapist? like a psychological therapist?
Yeah, I am a
wow,
marriage and family therapist. So yeah.
Oh, that's rad. You must
Thanks.
be getting so much business this time.
Oh my God, it's been like, full disclosure, I started this year with like one associate, because when you're licensed, you can then like supervise other people and help them get their hours. I'm like, oh, I want to adopt a baby therapist and help them become a full-fledged therapist. And so I started that off, but now I have 4.
Whoa.
Yeah, one of them I supervised, and she got licensed this year. I'm really proud of her, because you can only supervise 3 at a time, because you go over there with them and everything. But since she got licensed, I just adopted a 4th, and so I feel like
oh my gosh, you have all these Tamagotchis.
Yes. I feel like everyone else is like, oh, like I decided to like shelter a dog, and I'm like, oh my God, I just like hired more therapists to like help more people, because we're all really floundering a lot.
Gosh, that is so cool. I mean, congratulations. That's
Thank
awesome.
You. So yeah, now my living room is my music studio and my therapy office, and I'm sitting in here podcasting, and it's very strange because it's all the same room, but I do have different chairs for each of them. So like I physically am in a slightly different place for each activity.
Nice. That's so smart. Yeah. Yeah. And what do you do? And this will be lots of my, I'm just interested. But what do you do for music? What's the music thing that you do?
Hilariously, a friend of mine was mixing one of my songs on Twitch last night. He called it Space Witch music, Like, and
Ooh.
someone on the stream was like, wow, you're like the millennial Enya. And I was like, oh my God, that's the nicest thing someone's ever said to me.
So you're known. So you could be called Millennia.
Wow.
So dumb.
You're like, why? Why have I said this?
I know. No, that's amazing. That's so great. That's right up my alley. I can't wait. I'm definitely after this. I'm going to find your music. That's amazing.
Oh, I was listening to your music last night because I didn't know that you totally did a collab with Marc. How do you say his last name? I always want to call him Marc Rebillet, but that's not his last name.
McRiblet, it's back, guys. No, it's Rebillet.
Rebillet. Oh, that sounds so much fancier than it sounded in my head.
Yeah, Marc Rebillet. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You heard that little jam that we did. Yeah, we're gonna make more music together, but that was like a long time coming. Like all these people going, Marc Rebillet, if you're Marc Rebillet, you know. And then I met him like I want to say like maybe a year and a half to 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago in New York when I was there, and we just kind of hung out. We never played. We just kind of hung out, and we've hung out twice. I went to a show at the Whiskey that he had. That was really awesome to see him live. And so I met him first in person, like at a hotel lobby, and then the next time was in LA at the Whiskey, and we kind of hung out for a little bit. And he hung out at my house for a little bit once, and then finally we were like, oh, let's do a jam. Let's do this. And so I had my studio set up for him, and he walked in, and we sat down, and it was just instantaneously 100% kind of intuitively and psychically locked music.
Oh my God.
Like we were both hearing the same stuff, because we're both improvisers and we're both using our looping equipment, and we wanted to sync our loopers so that the clocks were synced if we were using a click track, but we couldn't figure that out in time. So we were just kind of freeballing it. So we were just using his machine. So he was controlling the looping, and I was just kind of going through my effects, and he would kind of select stuff, which I really would. But yeah, we came up with like crazy shit because he's got his, music that he's interested in. We both love funk and R&B, soul, things like that. But, which is like, the foundation for me, one of the foundations for me. But then he's also really well versed in modern kind of club music. And I'm more, I guess, a little bit more old school, but I love techno. And I come from much more of an alternative background, I guess, like goth music and industrial music and just like darker stuff. But I also like really poppy stuff. I mean, my range is huge, but like, but he kind of comes from a different place, and I come from a different place, but we meet in the middle. His mother's French from France. My mother's French from France. He grew up in Texas. I grew up in Montana. We both speak French. We both have a similar, I inspired him to get into this. And it's cool. It's an amazing story. I really look forward to making some longer form music, and I think people are going to really enjoy it.
That makes me so happy.
And
when you find someone that makes music in a way that is the way that you make music, I don't know how to put it other than that, but like when you find someone that when you start collaborating, you just get what the other person is doing, it feels amazing.
Yeah, it feels like you're in a, like when something is so synchronized and you kind of can't believe it's happening, whether it's, I mean, it happens a lot in art, obviously, like music, you're at a concert and then there's a moment that occurs and like the audience disappears, the performer disappears, and you're just seeing something. And in those moments, it feels like, to me, it's not really like, oh, life is like, or this is so fantastic, this is heightened. It's the other way. I'm like, oh, this is what reality is.
Yeah, it's this very strange feeling of like everything else falling away, and you're like, oh.
Yeah, you're like, oh, right. It's almost like, oh, I remember this. It's more like, for me, it was more like, oh no, this is the way reality functions. This is the way it's supposed to function. And and so we have to figure out ways to follow our passions to arrive at those moments, and that's kind of the feeling.
I love that. And I love that you two were able to, like, I don't know, whenever I connect with another musician, it's like that getting to know each other period sometimes is like critical, because if you just hop in a room with someone, even if you've heard what they've played, if you don't have that interpersonal rapport, it can be like a little weird.
Yeah, yeah. Well, all right, say that again.
I was like, that went several directions, Pam. Uh,
No.
it's like getting to know someone a little bit first. Like you were like, well, we met in a hotel lobby, and then we were at the whiskey, and then we were hanging out at my house. It's like when you start having that interpersonal rapport and then you start playing music together, it can sometimes be like more powerful, at least in my experience, than when you just walk in a room and are like, oh, okay, let's play some music. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think what it does, I think it also depends, obviously, on the person. I think in general that's true. I think like with Mark, you know, his because his musicianship is so high, his skill level is so high, and he's got so much attention on him
mhm,
that it was definitely better for me to meet him that way
got it.
than to immediately start jamming with him. I think in the case of like, let's say it's someone who's really amazing, and I've heard that they're really good, but we just like get into a room and just start playing music. There's a high likelihood that it would actually be really fun. You know,
Yeah.
we just resonate. So it really, in my experience, it really depends on you know, the all those factors, like, you know, how much expectation is there, how much, you
Mhm,
know, have
mhm.
you heard about this entity before you've met this person, as opposed to like, oh, we're auditioning a new bass player today, you know, it's like, oh, okay, this person walks in and they just like immediately groove with the band and you're like, yeah, you know, that like that can
Yes, that
happen,
one. We want that one.
but there's no expectation, you know.
Right.
So it's, and I've definitely been in lots of, you know, studio situations where I walk in, but you're right, it does help to meet with someone a little bit. But the also the scary thing is meeting with somebody and hearing from people like, oh, this person's a great musician, but then you start playing music and you're not quite jiving, and that's like the
Oh.
worst feeling. Oh, it's so sad. And I don't, it has nothing to do with the person. It's not, you know, judgmental. It's just the way it
Yes.
is.
Yes.
And that's kind of, that can be a bummer. And so I do like to know if someone, I like either like to be completely surprised by someone because I didn't see it coming,
Uh-huh.
um, or just have a strong sense based off of what they do that it's going to be great, you know, to kind of reduce anxiety. But in the end, you can't control anything, so what have you?
Well, and that's funny that you were like, yeah, you can't control anything. Because what I was thinking about as you were talking was that, especially with improvising, it's so much like almost controlled chaos. Like you have to have such skill with what you're playing that you can have purpose behind it, but also use that purpose to then just go with it. And especially when you're playing with someone else, I was like, what's that balance like between like kind of chaos and control there?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, improvisation is, you know, I call it a cooperative dance with chaos. You know, it's you know, it's like, it's an interesting thing. It's really like it's about listening, you know, like having really sensitive ears,
Mhm.
and when you're just constantly listening. So I think like in improvisation, people are great improvisers when we all pick up on the same frequency. And you know, we're on a radio dial and we're kind of searching through frequencies, and someone's like, "Oh, I got this one," you know, and then someone might be slightly different frequency, but they're sympathetic,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
suddenly you start building something, and then everyone starts seeing, you know, and feeling the thing that wants to come into the world. You know, it's
Mhm.
kind of like channeling, but at least, you know, from my viewpoint, but kind of like channeling, but you're kind of riding, it's like a surfer, you know, it's a stupid analogy, I've never surfed in my life, but it works because it's the perfect analogy in that, you know, a surfer is a human, with this board and the ocean.
Yep.
And so, you know, and so they're on this devised piece of technology that allows them to stand on the surface of the water, but they're completely at the whim of the wave. So they're listening to the wave and the way that it's moving, and how big it's going to be and how powerful it's going to be. And they're just listening through experience and intuition, and they're just riding it. You know, there's no plan necessarily. I mean, they might think, oh, I want to develop this trick or something like that. But other than that, they're just listening to the wave and they're responding to the ocean. And that to me is what improvisation feels like.
I think that's a beautiful analogy, and I've never surfed either.
Okay, good.
Like, I'm on board with that. This
Good.
stands. This checks
Oh,
out.
you're on board with
You
that?
see what I
Ha,
did
ha, ha,
there?
ha, ha,
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
ha.
How have you been? It's interesting that you're back, kind of back on the show, but also you created this app. And I was thinking, one, how's the app going? Two, how do you improvise when like there's no one else around to improvise with? I also was thinking of that. I was like, how do you do that on your own? Because we were just talking about doing that with Mark, but I'm like, when you're on your own, how are you tapping into that? And also, what are you putting out on the app? Those are like 4 questions in one. Have fun with that.
Well, I mean, when I'm improvising uh, by myself, it's a similar process. I mean, I think that's also one of the reasons why I'm just bringing up Mark as an example, because he's there's not too many people that do what I do, at least as visibly, I guess.
Mhm.
I know that there are other loopers, out there doing really amazing stuff, and people like KT Tunstall and who's the red-haired guy that's huge in England. I forget his name. Oh,
Ed
Ed
Sheeran.
Shrimpton. No, Ed Sheeran. Yes.
That one
So,
follows me everywhere and I don't understand it.
what is it?
It has like that like kind of almost marimba line at the beginning and
Oh,
I hear it
oh,
everywhere and I
do
have for
da
years.
do do da do
Yeah.
do da do do da. Yeah, I'm
Of
in
all
love with
songs
your
to start
body.
by.
Yeah,
Like,
I know. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, but he started as a looper guy
yeah.
too. So I mean, it's been around. It's like a street musician favorite.
Oh,
And
have you ever seen Moses Sumney play with his loop pedal? Because that is, oh my God, beautiful.
oh no, I haven't. Yeah, the I know Moses Sumney because he's a friend of my drummer Guillermo, and I've yet to really delve into his music, but he's a force to be reckoned with for sure. Um, I think it's like looping for me. Like when I first heard it, it was a solo with my teacher Jay Clayton. She used to use a Digitech 16-second looper or delay that also had a looping function,
Mm-hmm.
and she would, but it wasn't true looping. It was kind of like it would keep things as you're layering them, but
Mm-hmm.
they would slowly fade away.
Oh,
The original things would fade away, so you kind of like build on top and it would fade away. and and so I saw her doing it, and she was just doing like kind of vocal tonality stuff, like weird like harmonization and like kind of like really dissonant harmonizations and things like that.
oh.
And it was really amazing and very artsy and cool. And then I started seeing musicians using that. Would have been like in like 1993 or 94 or something like that. And then I saw then people started using the boomerang,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and which had a looping function in it as well. And also there was another looper, I'll remember later, but I started seeing people using that. But then when the Line 6 came out, I discovered its looping function and started using that as kind of a scratch pad. So, but looping for me, once you're able to put something down and listen to it and then add another thing to it, it's actually really easy as a solo artist to improvise in that way, because you're just responding to what you put down. You put down something and you're listening to that, and then you're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I think it needs this now. And it's kind of like a pottery or
It's
something,
very,
like
very meditative.
yeah, very much so. You just kind of you go into a zone, and again, it's all about listening. So especially if you're improvising and you're just listening to the thing that you put down, and you're like, oh, I like that. Oh, I think this will go over. Oh yeah, and then we could add this, and we could add this. So it's actually not that. It's actually more easier, than necessarily jamming with somebody else, because you're at the whim of like different ideas, and you kind of have
Right.
to be cooperative in that way. But yeah, so yeah, to answer that question, I think it's a little bit easier, um, and I'm just used to it. But yeah, but you were asking about the app as well.
Yeah, because you developed a WhatsApp, and I found that to be extremely charming. I was like, that's brilliant. What? I was like, I see what
Yeah.
you did there. What were the, yeah.
It's
Have you
true.
been playing with that over the course of the year? Like, how did that go? What was that experience like?
Oh, for with the app,
Yeah.
creating it. Yeah. Yeah, it's been it's an idea that I had in my head for a long time. Um, and I wanted I guess what it started with, I used to use, it's funny, I went down kind of memory lane last night, and I was looking at Vimeo and how I used to use Vimeo. And basically, Instagram is what I was doing on Vimeo when Vimeo first started. And then shortly thereafter, Tumblr.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just a chronological feed of experiences,
Mm-hmm.
and or like little, dumb pieces. So to me, that's all it was. It's just a record of those types of things, and that was really fun. On Vimeo, it was really fun because it was just basic. There were no ads. It was just put up your stuff, and same thing with Tumblr. It's like just put up your stuff, and it's simple. And then when Instagram came along, of course, it wasn't owned by Facebook,
Right.
and I fell out of favor with Facebook relatively early on. Like, I think it was maybe like 8 years ago, I
Mm-hmm.
stopped using Facebook, because I got tired of it constantly changing all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and then like the ads, and it just was a user interface nightmare, just like really just garbage.
It's a
And
very
so,
fatiguing experience.
so I just got off.
Yeah.
What's that?
I find Facebook to be
What
fatiguing.
was that?
It's just like, it makes me like, anytime I open it, I'm immediately like overwhelmed and tired. And so I don't use it.
Yeah, it's a weird. It's just, well, I understand what it is. It's just like they just want to keep your attention, at all costs. And so they keep changing things around, and adding features and doing this, and then like finding an upstart, that's doing something really cool socially, and buying them and adding that in there. It's just like a big Frankenstein of terribleness. And
Yep.
so I became disenfranchised with it pretty early, so I stopped. And then IG came along, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. It's got these filters, for photographs and stuff like
Mhm.
that. And I really loved it. And again, I could just do things chronologically. I could just go to someone's feed and just scroll down and go, oh, this is great. Or whoever you're following, you just see the photos as they're
Yeah.
posting them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was simple, and it was great. They didn't need to fix it. There was nothing that needed fixing. And then Facebook acquired it, and then of course, not too long after, it just turned into a shopping mall,
Yeah.
um, and just destroyed the idea of what Instagram was. And Yeah, and so I guess through all of those experiences, I just got tired of these limited platforms, because there's really only a few platforms that you can use that are kind of social and popular enough to gain a lot of people to look at your stuff.
Hmm.
And I thought, well, I want to be able to control the aesthetics. I want to be able to control as much as I can. So why not make my own app? And so that's what I did. I had it in my mind for many years, because I just didn't know how do you make an app. It was just like this alien concept. It's like, there's an app, it's on a phone, everyone's got a phone, and like these apps, they seem impossible to, it takes a giant company to make an app. And then I started inquiring, and my friend Sasha Markov, who's this genius creative, what do you call it? I guess creative executive, is that what you call them in advertising?
Uh,
Uh,
I like that my brain was like going through a Rolodex of words. I'm like, none of those are right. None of those. I'm like,
yeah, I know. None
director,
of them are right.
connector, coordinator,
Yeah, it's
like
like, yeah, a creative.
this. I don't
Anyways,
know.
whatever. It's creative director, maybe creative director. Anyways, but she knew this woman who's an amazing designer, and then we started hanging out, and designing the app and what we wanted, so forth. And then she suggested a company to work with that could develop the app. And and then we got to the cost, and the cost was crazy. You know, it was like $190,000 for an app,
Yep.
and that's apparently how much they cost, you know, or it can cost. But I was thinking more like, you know, 30 grand.
Yeah.
and
You're like,
and
"Back
you
it
know,
up."
yeah, I was like, I don't know. And then Sasha was just like, no, I think we can find something. And then she talked to this woman who knew this guy, um, Oliver Thomas Klein, who's this Brit who's living in Vancouver, and he's a coder, programmer, designer guy. And so I got in touch with him, and he was like, "Oh, I could totally make the app, no problem, for that amount of
Sweet.
money." And so he made the app, and yeah, so we went through different stages. It's still being developed, but it's out now on iOS and Android. And yeah, and it's just a place where I put my videos. There's no social element to it. You can't interact with it. But there is it's just like an art gallery, I guess. You go there
Right.
and there are photographs and videos and things you can check out, and then there's a store where I sell all my kind of old electronics and things, and kind of like my own Craigslist, I suppose. And then there are other features that I haven't been using, but I will use. There's like geolocational, um, I guess, geolocational specific media. So I can, pin a piece of media to a specific location in order to experience it. Um, and for instance, if I, pinned it on I don't know, some weird building or something in downtown LA, and then you have to go there. And once you arrive there, then you can unlock the piece of media.
Oh my
So
God, that's gonna be so much fun in the after times.
yes, I know. It's going to be great.
I was
That's
like,
going to be
"I
really
wish
fun.
they can go outside. That's gonna be so exciting."
I know. I know. I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah. So, that's like, those are some fun things. And also there's live streaming as well. So, I'm going to be using those things, but in the meantime, I'm making another app for myself to be able to upload media and things much more easily, because right now it's kind of convoluted the way I have to upload stuff to the
Mhm,
app.
mhm,
So this will be a direct conduit. So I'll be able to use it. It'll be like using Instagram or something for me for my app.
mhm.
So that's basically it. I wanted a place to bring people to see my stuff, and I will do like a lot of original programming and original shows, and eventually be doing live streams of shows and things like that. So I'll be kind of like my own. It's my own multimedia channel,
That's
essentially,
cool.
and no one has to worry about being tracked. And we're not going to track
Oh
anybody.
God, yeah.
Any of that garbage. And eventually it'll be available on the crypto side as well, using Web3. So we'll be um, kind of like into the future, the distributed future as well, because I want my belief is that the future is distributed. It's all these advertising models. They won't die, but I hope that they become less relevant, because
Right.
advertising doesn't work. Just it's like if these things want to figure out a solution to their problems, is just get rid of advertising and just make it two-tier, like YouTube does with YouTube Premium, or
Right. Right.
YouTube with
Right.
ads. I'll gladly pay money not to be tracked and to just have direct contact to the experiences I want to see. um, and it just makes more sense. If there was an IG that was like had a subscription, that would be amazing. But I don't think they're going to do that. So in the meantime, you just subvert all that, jump and just kind of leapfrog into the next thing, which is just a distributed internet. And all you need is a Web3 browser or an app that has a gateway to those
Mhm,
experiences. And you make direct purchases, um, in what I like to call, which I'm sure other people have called, the direct economy.
mhm,
So,
mhm.
so that we're just paying for things that directly have value to us between each other, and we don't have to worry about a middle person or advertisers, tracking data, and, all of that stuff. So I'm really excited about that. So that's kind of what my app is. It was very, very extra long-winded.
You sparked so many ideas in my brain. When you're talking about like the direct model, I was seeing today that people keep posting their like Spotify Unwrapped and things like that of all the songs that they've streamed, and then artists are posting things like, "Thank you for listening to this many of my song streams." But like you said, there's that intermediary force that is Spotify, which on one hand, it's wonderful to discover new artists on Spotify. I totally do. But then I go and I find them to have a more purposeful experience with their music if I really like it. Then I'm like, oh, are they live streaming? Can I tip them? Can I buy their music somewhere? Can I like, I want
Nice.
to, it's like bringing purpose back to that relationship with an artist. And it sounds like with your app you're able to do that because you're curating a purposeful experience. And also people are not then dealing with advertisements, they're not dealing with another platform. It's direct, there's no other steps in the way there, and I really like that.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I think it's just, I think it's not, I mean, it's kind of like, in the early days of the internet, I remember some band, recording an album and selling it directly off a website, and no one had ever done that before. And I don't know, they made like something like 100 grand or something,
Oh my
like
god.
directly to them, because,
Well done.
each unit back then was like, 10, $12,
Yeah,
you
to buy a
know?
full CD.
Yeah, and they had a good following, and people just bought the CD from them directly. So they just made all that money. So like, why, it doesn't make any sense to like give up all of that, essentially, if you're very popular on Instagram or what have you, and people are following you, and they're engaging in all these various ways, and Facebook is measuring and capturing all of that data, that behavioral data, and then using that in their algorithmic models to hit every person, like every person, essentially they have a file on everybody,
Yep.
essentially. And so there's a behavioral, psychological file on every single person, and they're using those files against all, not against, but however you want to look at it, but they're just using those different files for people on that site to enhance and further get them going down the rabbit hole, in those experiences. And at the same time, it's like, well, why all that garbage? Like, worry, like, why worry about all that garbage when you can just have a direct experience with somebody, and it's much more personal, and you're not being tracked, and you're just there willingly. There's
Yeah.
nothing there to trap you, other than, do you like this person and what they make?
Right.
Okay, great. Do you like what this person made? Yeah, and they're selling it? Yeah, sure. Then just buy it directly from them.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Like, that's so much easier than all that other garbage.
It's so interesting as you're talking about this because I interviewed the artist Hana, and I just started getting into like watching more Twitch streams because my mixer has been live mixing on Twitch. Um,
Nice.
Yeah, which has been really cool, because then I get to sit in on my mix sessions, and since we can't be in the same room, I'm like, oh, this is great. Thank you for broadcasting.
Yeah.
It's cool to see people engaging purposefully within almost like micro artistic communities. And it kind of reminds me of like the early days of the internet. Like it reminds me of like being in AOL chat rooms and trading like Tori Amos bootlegs, and then like being on LiveJournal and like sending each other playlists and making mixtapes and like things like that. Like people are engaging in a way where there's more purpose behind it and there's more intention instead of just like the fire hose of music, which like I think it's great that there's so much music out there, but sometimes it does have that effect of just like, I don't know how to value this because I don't really know how to engage with it individually, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I'm completely with you. It's like, it's like point of purchase, at a cashier stand. It's just like, it's a bunch of stuff, and it's just coming at you, and it's got colors and
Yeah.
sensations, and you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. And I've definitely discovered music through algorithmia, but it's just nice. I think that it's better when music is in, an installation, like a constellation,
Mm.
universal pattern, like, gravitational centers, like suns and star systems, and galaxies and things like that. I think it's nicer when you can like travel to a galaxy and discover a cluster of, things that are like scenes, like when
Yeah.
you're cruising around, and you go to some night or whatever, and it's featuring a bunch of bands, and they're all like friends, and they're in a scene, and you're like, oh, this is cool. Oh, and then there's this band and this band. I think that's much more organic to discover music that way. And algorithms are another avenue, but they shouldn't be the main thing. To me, it should be a well-balanced diet of, yeah, play something, see what you discover. Like, oh, who's that? Oh, that's crazy. Oh yeah, they nailed that one. I really like
Yes.
this band, and I would have never heard of them if it weren't for this algorithm. But then also put in the work and go and check out bands in the scene, or go to their apps or their sites like you were talking about, and then kind of see the bands that they promote, and so on
Yes.
and so forth. So I don't know, I think both can live in the same world, but the algorithms are obviously, they're just the focus right now because that's where the money is for
I
these
was gonna
companies.
say they're the most lucrative for the companies, but not necessarily the artists.
No, not at all. And we hear complaints about it all the time. And that's why I'm hoping that, we're able to, or that, hopefully my app model can be kind of a template,
Yeah.
like a Squarespace for apps, and for artists, so that we can have a reasonably priced app that's like really basic and you can add features on top of it. But just to like get other artists out there to have control over their own media and have a direct, economical relationship with their fans. And I think fans are going to love it. They're just going to be like, oh, this is great. I just get to be in this person's world, and and then that artist can promote another person's app,
Yes.
and so on and so forth. So you get this like cool group of apps, and hopefully that catches on, and everything's kind of distributed, and no one owns any of that shit, and everyone's in charge of their own worlds, and you get to visit people's worlds, and they get to organize them any way they want. And I think that's it's just like going over to people's houses, or someone's nightclub, or it feels more personal and intimate than Instagram, where
Yeah.
it's all addiction, which
And it's
I've
all like
definitely just,
fragmented.
yeah, yes, it's very fragmented. That's a perfect word for it. You go there and you're like, oh, it's like, it's the problem that I have with most of these social platforms, which is they I think they're basically only five things you can put up, for human beings to consume, which is audio, video, photos, words. I think that's kind of it. But so you have those things, and essentially it's all the same shit over and over again, but just in different ratios.
Yes.
So IG isn't any different than Facebook. Facebook isn't different than Tumblr, essentially, and Tumblr isn't different. Like all of these, but how they repackage things is
Mhm.
really that's the difference. So for Facebook and Instagram, they're like packaging it like, oh, here's a new feature. And it's
Right.
like, oh, you mean it's just words? You can like write words in a different way. Yeah, here's the new feature. Here, what's this other new feature? Oh, now it's called stories.
Yeah.
And you can just put these like little tiny, they're different formats of videos. They're like different lengths, and they're in a different spot on the app. And you click on that. It's like, isn't that the same thing as me just posting a video on my main feed? Yeah, but it's different because it's stories, and stories, they just kind of like go one after another, and we've reformatted the same shit, to make it seem new and exciting. And so
Oh
it's like,
my
how many ways are you going to chop up the salad?
Seriously, my mom calls them, by the way, for her birthday a few years ago. I gave my mom Instagram so she could follow my sister and see all the photos of her granddaughters. But she didn't quite super get how to use it. And so she asked me what was wrong, that all the pictures were disappearing. And I was like, what do you mean? It's because she was watching my sister's stories. But she didn't and she thought she was doing something wrong, that they were like
Yes.
vanishing. And she was just like, but why did they go away? And I was like, no, those are temporary pictures, and the other ones are like more permanent pictures. And my mom was just like, well, that's stupid.
I know. You're like, well, why, and it's in a weird way. I wonder if it was like a con scheme, by the, by the companies to be, well, I mean, I guess it came from, what was it? Snapchat was doing that.
Yeah.
Whatever. But in a weird way, it's actually really helpful to those companies because they get to, there's media, but their servers don't have to hold on to that data.
Yes.
So the data ends up, being deleted, over time. So in a weird way, it's just a data management scheme,
Oh, and in
so it gets,
though, your stories are archived on Insta, and that was a huge thing when Snapchat first came out, was whether they were actually holding
oh,
on to
right.
sharing data, because a lot of people originally were using Snapchats to like send nudes.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's right. Well, it's a problem when you use a service, and
Yep,
and it's the corporate forces get a hold of it.
yep.
But yeah,
Oh my
I don't
God.
know.
I love that somehow this conversation went to Snapchat nudes. I'm like, good job, Pam. How'd you get here? I don't know.
Yeah. Now we got to talk about what was it? What was that? What was it? That one thing that was out for a second. It was a chat roulette.
Oh my God. I remember that. That was
Yeah.
terrifying. That was pretty much like, do you want to go on an internet site where you can just get like just flashed by people? And so many people were like, yeah, yeah, I'm down.
Yeah, of course they were down. I mean, it was, in a way, I kind of appreciated it because it was like it was pretty honest, and when you hit spacebar to go to the next thing, it was like you're never going to see that again,
Right.
most
Right.
likely. So it's just like, oh no, I don't want to see that. Oh, that's interesting. Oh no, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that. And there's like something kind of really cool about that because it's I liked it. It was very pure in a way, and obviously not for little kids or things like that, but as an adult, watching that, I felt like it was more punk rock than than many of the things that we have now, which are all like, oh, I can't show that, no, can't do that, no, you can't show that, no, that's art, I
Yep.
understand, but we can't have that. And I'm like, you know what, that that sucks. It's just like,
Yep.
you know
Oh my God. I'd forgotten all about that website. Yeah, like the
yeah.
relationship also, just like what you post and why. Like I found that so interesting when you were talking about your app, because you are creating your own, it's like you created your own residency for yourself online. And I'm like, that's super cool, because you also do like 1,000,012 things. And so then you can present them together instead of being like, well, this goes on my curated feed and this goes in my stories. And then this is better as a tweet. And like they all are
Yes.
having these like weird social niches, and you're just like, here's my stuff, kablam.
Yeah, yeah. You're like, just come here. Just here's my room. Just come into my room. Check this out. Here's my record collection. Here are the posters. Like I like relating it to like human terms like that, as opposed to like, okay, well, I'm just gonna run down the hall and go to my little tweet place. Okay, now I'm gonna run to the kitchen and I'm gonna do my other thing, and now I'm gonna go outside to the apple tree and I'm gonna do, like
I'm gonna go
it's
all
like
cottage
it's
core.
yeah, cottage core. We're gonna go cottage core. We're gonna call Taylor Swift, and we're gonna, like after a while it just gets tiresome. I mean, I only use Twitter and Instagram really. I looked at Snapchat and I'm like, no, another slice of the pizza. TikTok, I'm like, yeah, I get it. These like short snippets of dance, but again, it's just kind of ultimately kind of dumb. In the pure sense of that word, it's just kind of like, I don't know. A lot of these things, they take these micro niches and they really kind of amplify them,
Yeah.
and like these tiny slices of like media occurrences. And again, it's the same stuff, but they'll change the duration. So it's like, oh no, this is about really short clips, and oh, and then we put some AI filters, and oh, okay, AI filters, short clips. Oh, that's cool, and like and so yeah, we've diced up the salad a different way. And like, oh, that's fresh. I'm gonna hit that. But really, like, you should be able to control however you want to present your media anyways.
Right.
So if you want to do like short videos, then just be able to post short videos. If you want to put like a series of short videos, then just edit a bunch of short videos together using tools on an app or whatever. But it should allow you to do whatever you want and present yourself any way that you want, as opposed to being held to the aesthetics of whatever service you're using. Whereas like Instagram just looks like a piece of shit. It's like there's all these like circles everywhere and like things to click on and like numbers and
Now
letter.
it's literally a store. Like so many people
Yeah,
are
it's just
migrating from the
shopping.
platform because they're like, wait, you replaced like the home feed button with literally like a shopping button? Like,
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and I think that that's what's going to kill them. I think they're going to die because of this. I mean, those types of models are going to die because of that. Because once someone cracks that distributed model and people are able to just start jumping on these apps that are wholly owned by artistic entities, like I think that's going to change, and then just regular people will be able to do that too. So there'll just be a huge distributed social network, and yeah, and you'll be able to visit anybody, and they'll all be able to interconnect willingly, like just like a handshake system. And then there won't be any need for advertising. There won't be any need for any of that stuff because people are just going to be doing it themselves, the way the internet was always supposed to be.
I was gonna say, I was like, this makes me nostalgic for like original internet. And I was
Yeah.
thinking, I was thinking like when you were saying that they all can be connected, it struck me that like they did reopen the set, they are testing everyone. And I was thinking like, gosh, it's so important to do the jobs you're doing because people want to connect, people want stories, people want art, like people want all those things because they give them meaning. And so it's like, how do you get that to people? And right now we just
Yeah.
have these like terrible apps. And
Oh
I'm
yeah, I know. Yeah.
like, it's like, how do you get that meaning to people? And how do you foster those connections, particularly now when we're all like, cool, cool, cool. We're all cottagecore now.
I know. Yeah, I know. It's totally true. Well, people, and people have gotten, they've gotten hooked, they've gotten addicted, and and I'm a victim of that too. I'll spend hours on YouTube, um, but or even like Instagram. I'll try, like when it first loads up and you get all those like, when you go to your search thing and you can see all these like extra things that are all algorithmically curated for you to check out. I've gotten good at not looking at it, like just getting to where I need to go without getting distracted most of the time.
That's tough. Not gonna lie.
It's tough. Yeah, it's like I have an ability of not seeing banner ads either. Like I try to get browsers that get rid of that shit anyways, but like I just don't see the advertisements. I see something flashing and I just kind of quickly scroll to hide it and then continue reading.
Yeah.
It's like I don't need any of that shit, and no one else does either. But there needs to be people need to know that they're willingly participating in something, as opposed to mindlessly being kind of mindlessly programmed to be interested in things. And I think that once people notice that difference, when they feel that difference, they'll be like, no, actually this is better. It's not like people are dying to, it's like I really need meaning in my life by having people throw advertisements at me. That's the way I define who I am. Like no one's naturally that way. It's just the advertisers have just worked out all the psychological angles to keep people interested in things. And not to say that advertising isn't necessarily evil. It's just, humans have been advertising since humans have become conscious.
Right.
You got to try these berries. They're really delicious. Like, I don't trust you. And then some other guy's like, you got to try these berries. Oh, I like this person. I think I'll try those berries now. So, that hasn't.
That guy, those berries might not be poisonous, question mark.
Yeah. Less likelihood of being poisoned by this person's recommendation.
Yes.
That's always been around. So I'm definitely not one of those people that's just like downward advertising. It should be like whatever is being advertised to you should be something that's actually relevant to you.
Right.
And the algorithms sometimes they hit the mark, but they also don't a lot of times, and it feels like a robot. So it's not easy to trust it, because I'm like, like whenever I see an ad on Instagram, I always mark it as spam. Almost always, like spam or some other like thing, or like inappropriate or something like that, and just kind of move on, because I don't want to contribute to their whatever it is, and it's probably not even doing anything, but at least it feels good.
Well, you're on there to connect. Like that's the thing, is that like I don't go on Instagram so that I can look at ads. I go on it so that I can be like, oh, what are my musician friends up to? What are some of the photographers I follow up to? It's like I wanna connect with people, and I want to connect with their art. And I know that some of that lives on Instagram.
Yes, exactly.
And so it's like that's what I'm going for. And so I don't, I'm sure there must be someone out there that's going on it to shop. I don't know them, but they might be out there. But it's like,
yeah. Well, I don't know. They're like, if people are like, well, then get a Sears catalog, or it should just be like Instagram shopping.
Yeah,
like what's Instagram? Let's say again.
I was like, have a separate thing for it. Cause yeah, it's really funny though. Like, as you said, that they do try and like profile you. It's funny to me, at least, to see like what the internet thinks that I want. Because
Right.
it's sometimes just wildly inaccurate. Though I do think it's funny that during this time, I've gotten more ads for coordinated cashmere loungewear. Like, the internet wants me to wear coordinated cashmere loungewear like really hard.
Wow.
It's really funny. And I'm like, what? And I'm so curious. Like, I want to know what it is I've put out there that they're like, this lady, that's what she wants. Like, it's really specific. And I have multiple companies over the last few weeks that have been like really targeting me. And I'm just like, what about me screams that? I mean, it looks really comfy, not gonna lie, but like, what are we going off of here?
I think, yeah, it must be, they're just like, well, she's a lady. Like, I think that's what it sounds like to me. They're just like, well, she's a lady of a specific age range, and that's what this, company designed them for. So we'll just put out a blanket, advertisement scheme.
It's really funny because like I don't know my age on a lot of things, and so for a while I kept getting like college ads because I guess looking at my photos, if you do analyze my face, I look like I'm around college age. I happen to not be. But like that was really funny. So I was like, oh, they think I'm really young. Then I started getting stuff for like engagement and cats. So then they're like, maybe they think I'm sad and single. And now they're like, oh my God, we don't know how old you are, but like, do you want to be comfortable?
Yeah. I love that. Oh, I love that. That's so
like,
beautiful.
There's like a whole alternate like avatar of me living in these advertisements. It's like, I don't know what she's doing. Maybe she's like getting another degree and like had a broken engagement and now just needs to like lounge.
Yeah. Oh, hell yeah. I don't know.
Do you have any parting words, I guess, for the audience about ways to manage doing multiple things during I don't know, the medium okay apocalypse?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is that, you have to take time for yourself and really, take this period take this period of time as an opportunity to learn more about yourself and to get in touch with yourself, which is always going to be your most important relationship. And that's definitely something I've been working on and to various degrees of success. But it's kind of it starts there, and really listening to yourself and what you really need, and what makes you feel healthy and healthful, and adventurous, and because that's the fuel source that you got to draw from to even get inspired to do the things you want to do. So you got to take care of the core engine first. So this is kind of like a downtime to do some maintenance on that. Not meaning that you can't be productive while you're doing that. Of course you can be, but it's just to me, it's an opportunity to figure out what's important to you, and what you really care about, and what you want to contribute to the world, and how you want to make it a better place. So that's kind of what I focus on. That kind of keeps me on track, even on the sad days.
Oh, well, and I like that a lot. So then when we do re-enter the world again, it's like we can do it with more purpose. Like we can take kind of what we learned here to be like, hey, do we need to do everything the same way? Probably not.
Right. Exactly.
Some things differently, and that'll be really cool.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, well, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Oh, yeah, my pleasure. I loved visiting.
Thank you again for listening to this episode of Why Not Both. If you liked what you heard, please make sure to like us and subscribe to us on your preferred podcast platform. You can also come hang out with us on social media. We are at WNB the podcast, both on Instagram and on Twitter. This season, we are brought to you by Under the Radar magazine. Under the Radar is a nationally distributed print, music, and entertainment magazine and website. You can find them at www.undertheradarmag.com, and feel free to support them on Patreon. Extra special thanks to our producer, Laura Studeris, who is literally a rock star. Thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you next episode.